Alright, we're back. We got some parts. We picked up some Moog outer tie rod ends for our Fox body. I removed the whole tie rod off the car, measured it at about 15 and a half. This is the third measurement we've taken on the job, so keep in mind all this is to just get it close. And for perfection, you're going to want to get the car aligned in an alignment shop. But the wrench that hooks on to the tie rod end is 1 inch and 5/16. I just happen to have that size wrench. Most people don't. You can use a pipe wrench or a large adjustable. I don't have an adjustable to demonstrate because I own one. I just don't know where it is. I never use an adjustable. I usually try and go for the right size wrench or socket, but I realize not everybody owns these big tools. But yes, 1 inch and 5/16 is the right size for the inner tie rod end. And like I said, I knocked it off the spindle on this end and just spun this end off. And if we get over here, I don't know if you can see, that is the play that was on the inner. So yeah, it was definitely shot. What I'm gonna do now, I'll end up either hacksawing through there or cutting it with a cutoff tool, sliding this boot off and transferring it over to the new part. And the problem there was, if you look, you can see the threads are rust jammed. I bought this car with 85,000 miles on it. It's safe to say those are the original tie rod ends from Ford in '86. So it's time. And like I said, I happened to shake down the front end and notice that, and that I didn't like. I have seen ball joints separate. If that ball came out at speed, you would lose steering and things would get bad real fast. So I haven't really driven the car since I noticed that. But yeah, that's why we're doing this. It's time. So we're gonna get set up to cut this ball end off, pull the boot off, transfer it over. I did measure this out to 15 and a half. One of the reasons why is I can count threads now and set this jam nut up where I can put this right back where it was, or really close, after I slide the boot over and get this on the car. So yeah, it's just a series of measurements to try and get it closed where the car can be driven to the alignment shop. Okay, so I used a cutoff tool or a whizzer wheel. I believe it's technically a grinder, but you get these cut-off discs and they're used for cutting off rusty stuff, which was the case here. I cut through the thin end of the ball stud, and I don't know if you can see the play. See how the ball's moving up and down in there. That shouldn't be. That should be tight. One thing I want to note, and I didn't think of it when I took this apart, there was a couple pieces of like plastic rings in here, and I threw them out. I didn't even think about showing it, but I suspect there's some sort of plastic or bushing in here that broke and popped out. But yeah, look at that ball play. That's what you don't want. Ultimately, what you don't want this ball to hammer its way out of this socket, and then your wheel just loses its hold and it just turns left, right, causes the car to go out of control, that kind of stuff. It's similar to a ball joint separation. So yeah, I cut that off. I'm going to slide the boot off that shaft, and it should really go, the boot should slide off that way, but I'm going to pull it off this way. Hopefully it doesn't ream this plastic out too much. I'm going to count these threads, take this all apart, slide the boot over it, get it ready to go on the car. Or I may put the tie rod end on the car, then slide the boot on. Another thing we're going to do, we're going to clean the boot up really good. clean all this grease off. There's a clamp here with an 8mm bolt. Newer cars, you got to cut the clamp off like a CV boot clamp. People use a zip tie, but this older 86 had a screw clamp on, and I kind of like that. They made it serviceable where you could take it apart, put it back together, reuse the clamp. Back in the old days, they just thought about serviceability. But yeah, that's where we're at. Okay, we're ready to get it on the car. I did coat the threads with anti-seize to make life easier for the guy who may align this in the future. Just your straight Permatex anti-seize lube. Any old grease will do too, but that's just a step I like to take. Okay, so there's two roll pins. They're 180 from each other. I'm going to start them in the outer tie rod, and I'm going to start it. Get under the car, wrench it on with our inch and 5/16 wrench. One thing we used to do, we used to use blue Loctite on these. I'm not going to do this here because I have the roll pins, and there's a little, like, this threads in so far, there's a little shoulder on the rack where the idea is you push the roll pins in. If this somehow backs off, the roll pins will catch and stop it from separating completely. There's one there, basically one at 6 and 12. So I'm going to start them now on the bench. I'm going to snug it up on the car, and it's tight. So I think I'm either going to have to get it at 6 and 12 or wherever it lands. I could drive one in with the hammer, maybe push the other one in with pliers. I don't know yet. It's tight. It's almost designed where you should do this with the rack off the car, but we'll see how it goes. I'm using a roll pin punch. It has a little dimple to center in the roll pin. You could use a regular punch, but this is specifically for roll pins. It has a little dimple. So I got that one started. Now, I got anti-seize all over my hands. And again, this is the fail-safe. This is the safety procedure, so your tie rod end doesn't separate. That's the way this one's designed. Yeah, there's no way to hold that. I gotta hold it with the punch. Roll pins will always have a beveled end on them too. That's your starter end. Put that in. That kind of self-pilots into the hole. As you can see, it's a pain in the ass because it won't sit flat because the other roll pin's sticking out. Alright, so we're started. Both sides. We're going to put that on the car with the wrench. Drive them all the way in flush. The other side I might have to squeeze in with a pair of channel locks. I don't know yet. If I can get it 6 and 12, I should be able to drive it down with a hammer, or maybe even a little like body hammer. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see there, but there's a machined like groove in there, a channel. I have that on a couple threads. Turn it in, you drive them roll pins in. They don't go into a hole in the rack, but they go in past that shoulder where if that tie rod end starts backing off, the roll pins will catch and stop it, like from vibration and whatnot. And like I said, you could use Loctite on these. I've seen that, like Loctite blue. Loctite red will make for a hard time changing the tie rods in the future. But yeah, that's the purpose of the roll pins. That's the fail-safe on these cars. And there's the roll pins are at like 6 and 12. So I gotta spin this thing on enough where I can get at them with a hammer and drive them flush. That's the fun part. I think this was designed to be done on the bench. but we'll see. Okay, so we have the tie rod in on the car. We used our hammer and roll pin punch to drive the forward pin in. It's just, if you look in at the tie rod, it's facing it like 9 o'clock. The other roll pin is at 3 o'clock, but the subframe's in the way, or the K-frame. I'm going to try and get around with a set of, I have various size channel locks here. I got Knipex, 3 different sizes. I got your Craftsman. I'm going to figure out what works here. I'm going to get in the car, get around, get on that roll pin, and then just try and death grip it with forearm strength and get that back pin to sit in. Alright, so we had this on the bench. I measured it against the other one. I counted 18 threads with this low electronic screwdriver. Got it on the car, counted 18 threads, put our jam nut on. Gonna screw the outer on, and it should fall in close. Then we'll take our measurement from the frame out that we did at the beginning. So there's just a series of measurements here to get the alignment back. It's kind of like going in the woods and leaving marks on trees so you know your way out. So I've measured, I've pulled from the right front tread to left front, measured from the frame out, measured the length of the tie rod. It's all in an attempt to keep the alignment where it should be. The only variable I see is that inner had play in it, so depending on where that ball socket was when I measured it, it may be off, you know, by 1/8 of an inch. But that's why you end up at an alignment shop getting it set perfect, which ultimately I believe that's where we'll end up. But yep, that's the job. And the fun part is I got to do the other side, but the other side should go quicker. Yeah, let's see what we got here. Oh. You get the idea. So that's it, folks. Last thing I'll do is I will measure tread to tread. You can see the wheels are sitting straight in the wheel wells. But I will double check that first measurement where I was laying under the car measuring the tire from tread to tread just to see where we're at. I'll drive it, make sure the steering wheel's straight. Other than that, the only thing you can do is take it to an alignment shop and get it precision tuned in. But this car handled pretty well the way it was, even with that loose part, so we should be alright. Final thing you're going to want to do with your tie rod end install at home is you're going to drive the car, make sure the wheel's straight, and see how it drives. It should track straight. The wheel might be a little off like this. And you'll know that, like in our case, we disturbed the left front tie rod end. So you'd go back, jack the car up, center the wheel. You know that we didn't touch the right wheel. The left wheel, in theory, is pointing out to the left. You mark your tie rod end, and you pull the wheel in straight, half turn, and then drive it again. And you want to go for a nice centered up wheel going down the road. And you might have to do that a couple times. But that's what you do. You get that wheel straight, car's driving, and then you do the exact same thing for the other side. It would be the right front passenger side tie rods. What we'll end up doing next. I'm inside the Dart right now demonstrating this with the wheel. But the Fox is kind of sitting outside. It's raining. It's nice and quiet in here. I can do this clip. But yeah, so you take measurements, but you still may have to tweak after you get the car driving. And then again, take it to an alignment shop if you want absolute perfection. But you can do this at home with tape measures you can get it acceptable where the car will be drivable, and you should have minimal tire wear also. But it takes a little bit of playing around, but you can get it done. And you could definitely get it done enough to drive the car to the alignment shop. All right. Thanks for watching.